My name is Lily. I am a 32-year-old office worker and I have been married to my husband Sebastian for 2 years. I met and married him through a relative. My family was a bit of a wealthy family, but their children were all girls, me and my sister Marie. My relatives, who were worried about the heir, introduced Sebastian to me, who said he could be a good son-in-law. Sebastian married me, and although he did not end up becoming the son-in-law, he started living with me at my parents' house. My mother passed away a few years ago, and Sebastian and I are living at home with my parents. My husband is extremely kind and seems to be a very nice person who treats my father with kindness. But a relative who introduced my husband to me told me just before we got married that he was concerned about him. I don't know how to say this after introducing Sebastian myself, but he is very particular about money, so be careful. I was a bit embarrassed to be told this now that we had just met and were about to get married, but Sebastian didn't seem to be concerned about money, so we got married as it was. Even after we were married, I kept an eye on Sebastian because I was concerned about what my relatives said, but he did not seem to care about money. However, he seemed to be concerned about my father's wealth, so when he accompanied my father for dinner, he would casually ask him how much money he had. My father told him about it without hiding it, so I didn't really pay much attention to it. Sebastian's other concern was about my sister, Marie. She is 5 years younger than I am, and in contrast to my calm and collected nature, she is bright, active, and flamboyant with men. She looks nothing like me, and my husband muttered in surprise when he saw my sister for the first time. "Your sister has a very different vibe from you, doesn't she?" I have mixed feelings when I see my husband admiring my sister, who is beautiful with a clear face, the opposite of my plain and inconspicuous one. Still, the reason he was introduced to me was that my relatives were worried that if I, with my quiet personality and plain appearance, could not marry, there would be no one to take over the family business. I thought at the time that I did not have to worry about that because I had a beautiful sister, but later I came to understand why my relatives were worried. My father spoiled Marie so much that he sent her to college after high school and even to a vocational school after college. Marie did not go to college or vocational school for any particular reason. She simply did not want to work. My mother, on the contrary, was very strict with Marie and tried to persuade her to get a job right after college, but my father pushed her to go to vocational school. After Marie graduated from vocational school, she got a job at a company that our father knew, but she quit after about 6 months. When she left the company, her excuses surprised me. "I can't show my talents at that company." My mother and I were appalled when she spoke as if she already understood everything about the job, even though she had not worked there for less than 6 months. However, my father, perhaps believing her story, immediately introduced her to a different company and got her a job. A short time after she joined that company, my mother fell ill and was hospitalized. When my mother was hospitalized, Marie went to the hospital every day and kept missing work. She eventually quit this employment and started saying that she would take care of our mother. She would just stay in the hospital room and talk with our mother or look at her phone in the waiting room. I had to pick up my mother's laundry and replace it with new clothes while she was in the hospital, and Marie was of no help at all. She may have been happy to talk to my mother, but after about a month in the hospital, her condition worsened to the point where she could not even talk. And within 2 weeks after her illness worsened, my mother passed away. My father and Marie were so upset by the suddenness of the situation that they could not even prepare for the funeral, so I had to do it myself. Thanks to the cooperation of my relatives, we managed to complete the funeral without incident. After my mother passed away, Marie started working part-time and at the same time moved out of our parents' house and started living alone. Since she could not pay the rent with only her part-time job earnings, our father bears the rent and utilities, and the money she earns is apparently used for fun. When her part-time job was not enough to pay the rent, she would come to our father to get an allowance. When Marie was with her mother was very strict with her, so our father did not give her any allowance after she started working, but now he gives her as much as she wants. I took it lightly, thinking that if both my father and Marie were satisfied with that, then there would be no problem. After I got married and moved in with my husband, my father continued to give Marie an allowance. I did not realize it at the time, but it seems that she also asked my husband for an allowance and he was willing to give her money. It seemed that when a beautiful sister asks him to do something for her, he can't refuse. Don't tell Lily that I gave you an allowance. If she finds out, she might get jealous. He gave my sister an allowance, but he kept quiet about it. Marie went out to work part-time whenever she felt like it and lived off the money our father and husband gave her. But such a life for her did not last forever. Our father became ill and had to be hospitalized. I went to the hospital in between jobs to take care of our father, but she never showed up at the hospital. Instead, she started calling me and asking for money. Our father has been giving me money every month, so please keep giving it to me. My rent, my utilities, they are all deducted from our father's account. She spoke to me in an angry tone, and I was surprised to learn the truth for the first time. I was angry at her for only caring about her own life, instead of worrying about our father who was hospitalized. I really wanted to hang up the phone, but she seemed to be in trouble too, so I asked her how much money our father was giving her every month. How much money does our father give you every month? Get a job and start living on your own money. She answered in a grumpy tone. You're so picky. I get $1,000 a month. And that's not including rent or anything. I'm stunned by her bragging about the amount of money she's getting. I thought to myself, if I'm giving her this much money every month as an adult, she's not going to be inclined to work seriously. I didn't think that giving money to Marie was that much of a problem, because I thought that my father would get better soon, even though he was hospitalized. However, my father's condition suddenly worsened, and I rushed to contact my relatives. The doctor told me that he was in a serious condition, and I was quite shocked. I wanted my husband to support me at this time, but he rarely showed up at the hospital, saying he was busy with his work. Moreover, even when he does show up at the hospital, isn't your father's inheritance great? Since you two sisters are the only two heirs, are you going to split it in half? He would ask me inappropriate things like that. I had no words to reply to him as he kept talking about his inheritance. I realized that this was what my relatives were talking about when they said he was so fussy about money, and at the same time, I felt disgusted. I explained to Marie that our father was in danger when she called me, but all she cared about was worrying about her own money. Don't worry about that, just make sure you pay your money every month. Without that money, I can't live. The phone call went dead just like that. Her story made me angry, but I was also concerned that I could faintly hear a male voice on the other end of the phone now. The voice sounded familiar, and I had a bad feeling about it. About a month later, my father passed away, but Marie and Sebastian did not appear even in his last moments. Having experienced my mother's funeral, I realized that preparing for a funeral is a very heavy thing to do. In addition, neither Sebastian nor Marie helped with anything, and Marie did not even attend the funeral. Sebastian did show up at the funeral, but as soon as it was over, he disappeared, saying he had work to do. The relative who introduced him to me also noticed that he was nowhere to be seen and asked me, "What happened to your husband? Isn't it strange that the mourner's husband isn't there?" I could only reply with a wry smile. He seemed busy with work, so he left. My relatives sighed as they heard my story, and I felt like sighing too. When my father's funeral was finally over and I was finally able to catch my breath, Sebastian asked me with a grin, "Finally, LOL, how much did you inherit? Even if you split it in half, you're still going to inherit quite a bit, aren't you?" As my relatives had warned me before we were married, his mind seemed to be occupied with my father's inheritance. Disappointed to learn of his true nature, I answered appropriately. "Marie has $10 million and I have zero." I hadn't even proceeded to talk to my lawyer yet, and I had barely finished the funeral, so I wasn't sure how I felt about it. Seeing him gleefully telling me about his inheritance made me want to laugh past my anger. He believed my words and immediately shouted at me, "What? You can't inherit property? You ain't got no use for me anymore. Divorce me now." I felt the same way, so I retorted, "So be it. You originally married me for my father's inheritance. I'll divorce you from here." I shouted and thrust the divorce papers I had prepared at him. He was a little flustered because I had produced the divorce papers as if I had expected this to happen, but he signed them as is. He signed the divorce papers as he was leaving the house. "You are with zero inheritance. I'm remarrying Marie and I'm getting $10 million. I didn't care about that and immediately went to the city office and filed for divorce papers. I was able to leave my lousy husband. He promptly filed the marriage certificate with Marie the next day. A few days later, Sebastian called me. "Does he still believe that story? When are you going to do the inheritance formalities? Hurry up and give Marie the $10 million. He shouted loudly. I was waiting for him to call me too. I didn't want to contact my ex-husband, who had left the house voluntarily. I answered him in a clerical tone. "Let's talk about it at my place this Sunday. I'll be waiting for you with the formalities ready." He hung up the phone, overjoyed at the thought of getting his inheritance, but I was looking forward to seeing the look on his face when he found out the truth. He and Marie came over to my parents' house over the weekend, and they were both surprised that I had called a lawyer. But he spoke as if he had convinced himself. "I knew you need a lawyer when you inherit a lot of money." Then the lawyer started talking to him with a curious look on his face. "We have to talk about the inheritance, but before that, I would like to talk to you about Lily's claim for alimony against Sebastian." With that, the lawyer proceeds to show him a few pictures. The lawyer shows him and Marie coming out of her house, and they are well dated. The lawyer speaks to him. "These photos are evidence of the affair before the divorce was finalized, and you will have to pay alimony." I heard Sebastian on the other end of Marie's phone talking about the estate and immediately asked the lawyer to investigate his affair. Perhaps caught off guard because I was busy with my father's funeral, the two met daily at Marie's house, thanks to which I was able to obtain many photographic proofs. The two were stunned when the talk of legacy turned to alimony, but Sebastian quickly regained his composure and retorted. "Alimony is a pittance compared to the $10 million inheritance. I'll pay you right away." The lawyer presented the documents for the alimony claim in front of him as he spoke so brazenly, and he signed them easily. After confirming this, I told him, "I hope you and Marie are happy with your zero inheritance, and since you signed it, I'll make sure I get my alimony paid." The moment Marie heard that she had zero inheritance, she screamed at me. "Hey, why is my inheritance zero? I know I get the $10 million. Sebastian got all red-faced too. "There's no such thing as zero inheritance, is there? I won't allow you to keep it all to yourself." He became angry. The lawyer quietly began to explain to the two angry people. Marie is the stepdaughter of their mother, who is already dead, and since she was not adopted by their father, who has now passed away, she has no legal parent-child relationship with him. Therefore, Marie cannot inherit her father's estate. Marie looked at me as if she didn't understand what I was talking about. "You were only about 1 year old when your father and mother remarried, so you probably don't remember, but I remember it very clearly. I remember because I was 6 years old when my parents remarried, and I remember how happy I was to suddenly have a little sister. It never occurred to me that I would lose my husband to such a sister. Both my father and mother were in trouble with their young children, and they thought it best to have someone to mediate between my parents and for the two of them to remarry. My mother loved me like a real daughter, and my father cared for Marie. My father spoiled Marie, perhaps because he cared more about her because she was not his biological daughter. My parents each remarried with children, but my mother refused to adopt my sister and father because relatives suspected that she was after my father's wealth. The reason why my relatives only encouraged me to be married was because they knew that I was the only one who could inherit my father's property. It would have been more complicated if my father and mother had children, but fortunately or unfortunately, they never had any. Perhaps they did not have children to avoid future disputes over inheritance. I now know that my father helped her with money even after she reached adulthood because he could not pass on his inheritance to Marie. Likewise, I was not adopted by my mother, so we were not legally parent and child, but it never bothered me in my everyday life. My parents had not told Marie that they were remarried to each other, and she seemed to have learned the truth for the first time today. Sebastian immediately understood what was going on, and his face changed from red to blue. Not only did he not get the inheritance from Marie that he had hoped for, but he was also charged alimony and had even signed the papers. He looked blue. "Were you lying when you said Marie gets $10 million and I get zero?" he asked me. I stifled a laugh. Of course it was a lie. I was trying to get back at you for cheating on me behind my back. Besides, there's no way my dad had $10 million in his inheritance. As expected, my father, who was a wealthy man, but did not have a $10 million inheritance. Then Marie, who had been silent until now, suddenly shouted, "I've made a lot of purchases counting on our father's inheritance. Besides, what is going to happen to the money our father has been paying me? Will you pay for it?" I answered my sister, who was appealing to me with a frightened look on her face. "You're married and have a husband you can count on. Let him provide for you." She looked at my blue-faced ex-husband, to which Sebastian replied, shaking his head from side to side, "I can't afford it either. I've shopped around a lot in anticipation of your inheritance. Besides, I even have to pay alimony, so I have to take care of myself." After he said that, he suddenly got down on his knees in front of me and started apologizing. "Lily, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll apologize, but can you get back with me?" My lawyer saw this and laughed as he prepared to leave. It was funny to see him down on his knees, wondering where his arrogant attitude had gone when he came to the house. When the discussion was over, Marie and Sebastian nodded and left, apparently divorced soon after. He had remarried for the inheritance that Marie would inherit, and it seemed that he was not interested in her who did not receive any inheritance. As he told me himself, he cannot even take care of her because of his alimony payments to me. Since he has no assets, I decided to have him pay the alimony in installments from his monthly salary. I was advised by my lawyer that this way he would not miss out on getting it. Our father, who had supported her, was gone, and she had no choice but to work part-time every day, but she was not able to pay her debts, so she went bankrupt. After that, she moved out of the apartment she was living in, and we don't know where she went. My father had been thinking about Marie and helping her with money, but he spoiled her in such a way that she could no longer work seriously. After that, I started living alone at my parents' house, and my relatives again talked to me about introducing a man to marry me, but I refused. I don't want to be introduced to another man like Sebastian again, so this time I want to look for a marriage partner firmly by myself. What did you think of this story? And please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.